morning. Today, I'm pleased to have Peter with me. We can talk something about China more deeply. In the last video, we talked about the coming election of the U.S. President election. Right?
That's right.
And we refer to those U.S. foreign policy, which is focusing on China.
Exactly.
Then it's time for talk about China itself. When it comes to Chinese policy, we can internally, externally. Internally is, which trigger our concern is China uses internal suppression policy toward its minorities, among which the Muslim area is always our concern. As we all know, through the past several years, the Xi Jinping administration, they adopt a very tight policy in Muslim area in Xinjiang Autonomous Region. And the party secretary of Xinjiang is called Chen Quanguo. But surprising enough, we found this guy recently is keeping very low profile. In just closed so-called the 5th session of 19th National CCP Party. This gentleman called Chen Quanguo didn't say anything. So I want to invite Peter. What's your comment based upon your information source? What do you think about the Chinese Communist Party's policy towards its Muslim minority area?
Well, I think what is telling what you told me is it's information that you really have to search for in the sense of a high official of the Communist Party basically being told to be quiet. So that means, again, that there's internal tension in the party regarding the Muslim areas of Western China. I think it's very concerning for Western democracies because now it means that the People's Republic of China is being overbearing in denying the Muslim population of the People's Republic of China their identity. And they are trying, from what we have learned through media sources and for people who have lived through the so-called re-education camps, that this is in essence a form of genocide where Muslim Chinese are being denied their identity in favor of becoming Han Chinese or whatever Chinese cultural group that they are trying to be made into. So this is unacceptable, and it puts into question the infringement of minority rights in the People's Republic of China. And if it is truthful what is going on in the so-called re-educational camps in the Muslim part of Western China, then it means that, in essence, the People's Republic of China does not respect minority rights and sees minorities outside of Chinese culture as an affront to the People's Republic of China and basically as a threat to the ruling party. Am I correct in assuming that?
Yeah, I'm really curious. Is that problem so serious that you can use, I heard you use a genocide to the Muslim area?
Well, I think we went, you and I, and Don, who's behind our camera, to a screening of the Confucius Institute. And one of the persons that was at this screening was someone who had come from the Muslim part of Western China. And she was categoric in her description of what went on at these re-education centers. So if you connect the dots, then I don't think it would be an understatement to see this as a form of genocide, because you are being denied your identity, you are being denied your religion for the sake of terrorism, or for the sake of any affront to the legitimacy of the of the Communist Party in China. So I think genocide is something that was done very cautiously, but only done when there was testimonials from people who have lived through it, who have escaped it, or undercover investigative journalism by news organizations that had, for whatever reason, access to privileged information.
I understand why you call it genocide. I think the information source you get from those so-called Confucius Institute that shoot by those called Falun Gong organization, they kind of a little bit over-exaggerated here. That I think it's true. The CCP and the various municipal government in Xinjiang area, they toppled down those mosques on a massive scale. But things is not as worse as genocide kind of stuff. They really destroy those cultural heritages through years from those minority areas. But I still think the Falun Gong organization is in order to draw attention from international world. Sometimes they use
Dramatize.
Yes,
Yeah.
dramatize,
Dramatize.
and,
Yeah.
a little bit over exaggerated the fact. So I think it's. I agree with you. See, the Chinese government, the way they treat minority people in Xinjiang area is unfair and violate fundamental human rights. But as a matter of fact, you say the Chinese government, they even treat the Han ethnic group, the majority of Chinese, also in an unfair and human way, right? They so-called their internal policy, sometimes to some extent is consolidated by using the same standard, by including censorship of those social media and no free journalist kind of stuff.
So what you're telling me is that there's always a discriminatory viewpoint on anything by the CCP that's outside of their bubble. So that's what you're telling me, basically, that they are discriminatory outside of their bubble, outside of their...
the things complicated is sometimes or often, as the Chinese people say, the central government, they treat minorities much better than treat the majority Han ethnic group, because they give more supply in those food or the other material, like compensated in those unfair policy. On the one hand, they like grab those natural resources in like the Xinjiang area without compensating them enough.
So the analogy, the descriptor, the visual picture, if you would be that China is a bottle of Coke, the liquid are the Chinese people, the cap is the Communist Party, and of course, everything being equal, things are always in movement. So, you know, the China is being, the bottle is being shaked, the foam rises to the top. These are the conflicted minorities, or people who are conflicted with the governance and the repression going on in China. And this is pent-up pressure, and the cap is the Communist Party that doesn't want to be unscrewed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
At the end of the day, politics or internal policy, either for CCP or any other countries, lying on how to split evenly or fairly the benefit or resources among various benefit group or ethnic groups. So in future we will see how Xinjiang autonomous region will go in if Chinese government won't change their policy, which already been proved is failure. Because any country cannot rule by the police only.
No, exactly.
That's
And,
the simple truth. So,
exactly. And how do you mitigate constant pressure, right?
Yeah.
In machinery, in technology, you always have a pressure valve, right?
Yeah.
There comes a time where a locomotive needs to have a pressure release, right, to keep the whole system working properly, right?
Yeah, particularly in China, we've already noticed the sad truth is the internal so-called security maintaining cost is way above on top of its defense budget. So regime cannot last any longer. We still keep containing this, particularly under the downside of Chinese economic growth.
Yeah, and
By this,
if I could just end on this, I follow, and I've mentioned this to you, Crossroads, by the investigative journalist Joshua Phillip. He has a podcast every evening, and he basically, in a question and answer with an American commentator, said that he gave the CCP probably another year of existence,
Wow,
roughly. Oh yeah,
very bold prophet.
no, but from his experience, and he has had a lot of experience, and he basically gives them roughly another year that they will implode from within, that the pressure will get just too great, and that, you know, that little bottle top will essentially pop up, and
Like
and
explosion of a volcano.
an explosion of outrage, right? He thinks that it will come from that the precursor or the spark will come from a province that will start not obeying orders coming from Beijing, right?
I wish the day, if it really comes, it won't incur any external stress to the rest of the world.
No, but I think
As we've seen the overnight turn on Soviet Union, former Soviet Union.
yeah, let's hope it is a peaceful
Transition,
process.
yeah.
Yes, I think the Chinese people are intelligent enough to know that they have suffered enough, and they will want a peaceful transition. But I had to agree with Joshua Phillip. He categorically said that he gave the CCP about a year.
The only thing I can say is I wish Chinese people, because they really deserve a peaceful transition. And they suffer a lot from this regime. And
They've
cannot
suffered
anymore.
too much. They've suffered too much, and it is their right to determine their destiny, and we would welcome them wholeheartedly into the real world of the global village.
My comment to Joshua's comment is he is too optimistic.
We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But you know, I think he is also impatient. I think from his knowledge of the PRC.
In next video, we can talk more about is China right is over.
Yes, exactly.